Cubs prospect Matt Mervis, one of five that were sent to minor league camp as part of a roster cut on Sunday. We're going to talk about that and look at the roster as it sits now with 42 players still remaining and needing to get it down to 26 for opening day. And I'm going to give you my thoughts on where I think there could still be some position battles on the roster. Couple of prospects that aren't on your top 30 list, but that I think could make an impact on the team in 2024. And they're really showing up in these spring games. And Ian Happ's back, and we got a timeline now on Jamison Taillon. All that right here on the Cubs Baseball channel. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Thanks for hanging out. Let's get this party started by saying go Cubs. Hit the bell so you know when we're new with shows. Peace, everybody. It's Mick Gillispie. Welcome to the Cubs Baseball channel. I'm at Broadcaster Mick on the socials, and now we're past St. Patrick's Day, and we're starting to close in on what the roster is going to look like when this season starts. So let's get right to it. Cubs made a roster cut before the game yesterday, and it looked like this. Matt Mervis being one of the players who was sent down to minor league camp. The 25-year-old was battling for that first base job. You saw him last year in the big leagues, didn't do too well. He hit 167. He was 15-90. But in the minor leagues, he was great. Over the past 3 years, the guy's hit 37 bombs, 39 doubles, 119 runs batted in. He doesn't strike out much more than he walks in those at bats. He hit 287 and struck out 139 times with 93 walks. And that's, 160 games in AAA over the last 3 years. But it's just been trying to figure out how to let that translate into the major league game. And he did good this spring. He hit 281 in his spring games, had a home run, had 7 walks and 8 strikeouts. That's in 20 spring training games. And he has just kind of been a lot more like the guy that we kind of expected him to be. So that's the good news, for the Cubs, because, obviously they want Mervis to compete for that job. Now, when the Cubs made the trade for Michael Busch, they traded for him to be a first baseman. They didn't trade for him to play third or second like he did with the Dodgers. They must have liked him from his days in college and knew that he could play first base. And that's something that he's actually getting better at defensively this entire spring. And he's played first base. He's starting to hit the ball as well. Other guys that were optioned on Sunday included Keegan Thompson, who will go to Iowa, someone that you've seen in the big leagues before, Cam Sanders, who I'm going to talk about later in the show, a right-handed pitcher, Chase Strumpf, Bryce Wyndham, catcher, who you knew eventually him and Strumpf and Sanders and Thompson were all going to go. I guess we weren't really thinking that Mervis was going to make the team. But, with that said, he got on base and did some things, played first well, and, and had a good spring. Didn't have a great spring. Wasn't like watching David Bodie, who is making you talk about him, but it was respectable. And it really started to show the guy that we know from the minor leagues in the big leagues. Patient hitter, kind of the walks and the strikeouts being even, some power, hit 281. So I would say for Mervis, it was a good spring training. And he also gives the Cubs confidence that, if he gets called back up, he'll be ready to help out. Now, I told you I want to talk about 2 guys who aren't on your top 30 prospect list. But I said this before, and I'm not, sometimes I talk about the people that make the prospect lists and maybe they don't know the organization. And over the years, and look, I've been around a long time. I've seen that happen before. I'm not saying that's the case with Cam Sanders or Jake Slaughter. I think there's just a lot of talent in the Cubs system right now. But these are two guys to watch. Cam Sanders and Jake Slaughter, both LSU Tigers, and both drafted by the Cubs. Sanders, whose dad was a big leaguer, really good stuff. His biggest problem has been throwing strikes, but this spring he has just been really solid. He's got a good fastball. His breaking ball's also effective. It's just for him not being the guy that comes in, walks the bases loaded, and then strikes him out. He's got to be a lot more reliable with his outings. And if he can eliminate the walks, this guy's got the kind of stuff who could be this year's version of Merriweather or Leiter. You know, he's got all the ability to get there. And I thought that this spring, I saw the best Cam Sanders that I've ever seen. And I watched him pitch as a starter in the minor leagues, and it was Jekyll and Hyde, but he just looked confident. The stuff played, and I think he had a really good camp. And then Jake Slaughter, who's not on anyone's radar, but hit a home run with the St. Patrick's Day hats on yesterday. Here's a guy who was a football player. Growing up, played football, and the Cubs drafted him twice. And he's starting to figure out the game of baseball. When I say figure it out, it just takes years of you get a great athlete and you're spending time between football and baseball and other stuff. Now he's done nothing but play baseball. He's been so locked in. I think that he's a player that the Cubs need to put at third base in Iowa and him be a contingency plan for Morel. He's got power. He makes contact. Yeah, look, does it always look as beautiful, the swing, as, like say a Suzuki who has a really beautiful swing? No, but he makes contact. He hits the ball hard. And that's what's great about baseball. It doesn't matter how you get to the ball. It's the fact that you get to it and you hit it hard. And so it was good to see him with the home run, but he's a guy that's been in minor league camp, and then he's done so well in minor league camp. And a lot of people have told me, I mean, he's just been hitting the cover off the ball in the minor league camp, that the reward is going to the big league camp. And he's followed suit there. His dad and his uncle both played football at Louisiana Tech, and they were on the same football team as former Cubs national cross-checker and now with the Yankees, Sam Hughes at La Tech. And they're pretty good football players, and comes from a family of athletes. But it's been fun watching him. One of the games I was at in spring training, he had a hit. And then seeing him, yesterday, I'm going, you know what, this guy, he's worth bringing up, because just because your name isn't on a prospect list doesn't mean that you can't have an impact or get to the major leagues. And maybe it's not with the Cubs eventually. Maybe it's with someone else. But both of these guys I thought had really good spring trainings worth talking about. And I think that also shows you how deep the Cubs system is right now, where that you could have two of these guys. Sanders can throw it up to 100 miles an hour. Slaughter with great power. And, in a really sneaky, fast base runner. Both had great springs, and they'll both be in Iowa, AAA, and who knows, maybe we'll see them get an opportunity down the road. Someone that was back in the lineup yesterday, Ian Happ. He was 1 for 3, had a double, hadn't played since February 12th when he had that mild left hamstring strain. Hamstring strains are definitely something that you don't want to mess with. You want to, and with a lot of leeway or runway or whatever you want to say before the start of the regular season, they could let Happ take his time. I saw him in a sim game taking cracks couple like last week, looked good. And today, going into the backstretch of spring training, he's playing games and, he DHing, and eventually he'll play the field. But that's a good sign for the Cubs. You want to have your team ready and not hurt when spring training ends and the regular season begin, you know? So, 1 for 3 in the game and looking good. And so that to me is great news for the Cubs. Now, another guy that's dealing with an injury is Jamison Taillon. And I mentioned it yesterday that the MRI came back relatively clean, in the words of Jed Hoyer. And now we know that Taillon is feeling a lot better. He said that. He said yesterday that he's feeling much improved, that he is targeting a March 19th or 20th bullpen session. He's had the back issue. So he's been doing the flat ground catching, the long toss, which a lot of pitchers do. And, he's saying that, he feels like, and the same thing that Jed Hoyer said, in the interview I heard on Friday too, that he feels like he'll be able to give the Cubs maybe a couple innings on opening day, but he's got to get stretched out eventually to be able to start. And they want to get him to around 100 pitches before he'll be able to do that. So he'll have a little time on the IL, but it shouldn't be too long. And at the beginning of the season, like we talked about yesterday, there's a lot of built-in off days, and right now you have a very healthy staff going through spring training. So how that's going to play out, I think, is interesting. All right, but it's good news for the Cubs. And I guess it's just kind of following suit from what we talked about yesterday. All right, so after the roster move with Mervis off, I'm still trying to figure out like where we are position player wise, and eventually we'll do bullpen as well. But let's just say that Happ's ready to go, which it looks like he's going to be. I'm thinking that you're looking at Happ in left, Bellinger in center, Suzuki in right. You got Busch at first, Nico at second, Dansby at short, Morel at third, Gomes behind the plate. And position player wise, depth, you got Amaya, obviously your backup catcher, Mike Tauchman. We already know he's on the team. Patrick Wisdom on the bench. Could Wisdom be a guy that they don't bring back? I don't know, but it really does feel like he's going to make the team. Miles Masterboni, who plays shortstop, and that's helped him a lot. The fact that he can play outfield and he can play shortstop and infield. Some guys can play infield, but they can't play short. He can. Now, the other guy who is projected to make the team is Garrett Cooper. And I was just trying to figure out like who thinks Cooper's going to make it, or Dom Smith, or or Peralta's going to make it, right? David Peralta. And the Athletic said in their story that they felt like it would be Cooper, who came over from the Padres. He gives you your veteran backup first baseman, DH type of guy. I don't think you'd have room for Smith and Cooper. And Peralta's coming back from an arm injury, surgery, where he isn't really throwing a whole lot. He had a torn flexor tendon in his left elbow. So maybe that kind of has, limited his opportunity to make the team. And then Nick Madrigal right now hasn't been playing. He's got a hamstring. I got a feeling that he's going to end up on the IL to start the season. And then the other thing would be, well, if you sign Cooper, if he's the guy that you'd have to sign him because he's got a minor league deal, but not a major league deal, how do you do that? Well, Caleb Killian's going to go on the 60-day IL. That would be your move, right? So I feel like position player wise, where things sit right now. Alexander Canario, I felt like had a good shot to make the team. The problem for him is that he's got options, so they could send him back to AAA. And I'm guessing in AAA, he's going to play left field, right? Because Pete Crow Armstrong's going to play center. And the AAA team at the beginning of the year could be really good, although sometimes it's not. And the reason why is when guys think they're going to make the big league team and then they don't, it's sometimes hard for them to adjust to be minor leaguers, so we'll find out how that all works out. But we'll talk about the bullpen coming up. The one guy that I'm honestly pulling for is Carl Edwards Jr., CJ Edwards. I would love to see him make the team, just because of my love for that 2016 World Series championship that the Cubs won, him being on there, knowing him from, when the Cubs, traded for him and seeing him work his way up to the big leagues and knowing him. So we'll find out. But he's had a pretty good spring. The bullpen should be better this year. I mean, it just feels like that this group is going to have way more options than what we saw with them last year. So maybe tomorrow we'll kind of get into that. But thanks for hanging out with us here on the Cubs Baseball Channel, guys. Want to remind you that the show is brought to you in part by our friend ChadwickAnderson.com, the guy we call Catfish. You guys know him. He's one of our country's top mortgage advisors. He's helped over 10,000 families get into homes and studios like this one. He's an investment consultant and an Airbnb expert, and you can contact him right there. That's his number, or scan the thing over there, and he can help you out. ChadwickAnderson.com, and part of our crew. All right, thanks, guys. Mick Gillispie, like and subscribe, and go Cubs.